And welcome back to Ring Crap, presented by Forever Blueshirts. I am Jim Cerny, and there he is. If ever we needed the veteran voice of reason at this point, as Ranger fans are jumping off bridges or threatening to jump off bridges, throwing up their hands, season's over. If ever there was the veteran voice of reason that can talk current Rangers, historical Rangers, and tie it all together, it is Rick Carpiniello. Carpy, thanks for a few minutes today.
Yeah, good to see you, and always good to be on. I don't know about if I'm going to talk anybody off because I've been through this so many times, and I expected this. I expected that as soon as they lost the game, it would be disaster, as we say, and the two games this is a nightmare, and that last performance by the Rangers was dreadful. I mean, they never had their foot on the gas the entire time. I think they were lucky to be up 1-0, and so, I figured today was going to be what it is, which is, this is the end. It's all over. They stink. That everything they've done to this point means nothing. And when in fact, if you've seen enough playoff series, you know that stuff changes immediately, game to game. There's no carryover from game to game. There's no reason to believe that tomorrow's game is going to be the same as yesterday's game ever, and we've seen with these Rangers too that they react pretty well, that they respond pretty well when they have a performance like that.
Yeah, and they've done it throughout the season. They got the right guy at the helm. Peter Laviolette is even-keeled guy. He's certainly got the pulse of this team. And his whole mantra, right through 7 straight wins to start the playoffs, has been, it's about one day at a time. What are we going to do today? Today's a practice day. What are we going to do tomorrow? It's a rest day. Oh, the next day is a game day. Boom, boom, boom. It's never, and like you said, never concerned about positive or negative momentum going into the next game. They drop the puck and we start fresh. It's not like, you have a new pitcher in the game, in baseball. Where it depends on the starting pitcher. No, we're just going to start completely over, and there's no carryover. And these are two really good teams. That's what I think a lot of people missed on this because the Rangers, ran out to 3 one-goal wins. These are two really good, evenly matched teams. And yes, I know last night was a stinker for the Rangers, but I'm not surprised that we're here.
No, and Rod Brindamore is 100% right that the first 3 games could have gone either way.
Right.
Carolina could have been up 3-0, or it could have been 2-1 either way, or whatever. This series is very even. I don't think they're great teams, honestly, but they're both very good teams. And I'm a little surprised, actually, under Peter Laviolette, that they did not adjust at any point last night's game. Game 4 rather, I expected this could be the letdown game, and they let down early, but they played okay. I thought they played pretty well throughout after getting behind early. Game 5 was it reminded me of Game 5 in the Stanley Cup Finals in '94, where they never had their game. They never reached their level at any point in the game. Their special teams weren't particularly good. Their 5-on-5 play was awful. Their defensive zone coverage off the rush was terrible, and they never got there. And I'm actually surprised that Laviolette. It looked more like a Gallant game for the lack of reaction and the lack of adjustment. But so that surprised me, but I do think Game 6 will be completely different. Completely different.
Yeah, I think so too. And you get the extra day off in between. I don't think that hurts them. I don't think there's any tired coming into play here. But I think that the Hurricanes' relentless pace, the way they come after you, can both physically and mentally start wearing you down a little bit over the course of a long series, even when they're losing games. Even though they were down 3-0, those were hard-fought wins for the Rangers. How much do you think that has come into play so far in the first 5?
Yeah, for sure. And if they didn't expect that, then I don't know what they're thinking. I think they did expect it, and the way they played the first 3 games showed that they did expect that and they did anticipate that. There has to be some pushback though, and I didn't see that in Game 5. I didn't see any pushback. It wasn't a very particularly physical game, especially when you watch some of the other series going on around the league.
Yeah.
Uh, game 5 was really, patty cakes. It was just not. It wasn't what you expect from two good teams in a playoff series. I didn't think Carolina was great either, but the Rangers certainly weren't close to what they need to be. And for sure, they're going to get Carolina's best, and now more than ever, they're going to get Carolina's best because they're going to be all fired up to get this to a Game 7, and their crowd is, as we know, extremely loud. But the Rangers have to push back a little bit, and that starts with maybe some physical play, maybe some driving to the net, certainly more responsibility in the neutral zone and getting back on the rush. I mean, you could make a laundry list of things you have to do to win a playoff game, and the Rangers didn't do very many of them at all in Game 5.
Yeah, and you picked up on something that I've talked about all season. One of the biggest differences in this year's team as opposed to recent years when they were still a very, very good team. But I thought the thing that really made them different this year was their commitment to a 200-foot game, in particular, winning those battles in the neutral zone, making it just hell for teams to get through. And the game I always use as an example is that March 12th game down in Raleigh, the 1-0 Rangers win. Man, they made it hell for the Hurricanes to get through the neutral zone.
Yeah.
Because once the Hurricanes get through the neutral zone, you're in for it. Your back's turned, you're defending, you're chasing pucks, they're whipping it around, they're shooting from everywhere. So the question is, how? Is it more on the Hurricanes or is it more on the Rangers that maybe the Rangers lost a little bit of their structure here in the neutral zone, which to me, I think is just an invaluable part of this series.
Yeah, I think it's the Rangers. I think it's pretty much, and that's how they'll look at this. They won't say, the Hurricanes are this or the Hurricanes are that. They're going to say it's us, and this is our doing, and it's up to us to fix it. That one play where on the Kuznetsov goal where Panarin's with him stride for stride and just lets him go.
Yep.
I mean, that can't happen. And Panarin, he'd been so good all year, and even through the first few playoff games, although he wasn't, I don't think he was dynamic, he was certainly big, came up big in big situations. His last two games have really left something to be desired. When that line's letting you down 5-on-5, then you got big problems. And I expect a big bounce back from that line.
Trocheck, who's had a great season, certainly a great start to the playoffs. Not just the scoring, but winning faceoffs like they're going out of style. Terrific defensively, and then the intangibles, the Brad Marchand, if you will, coming out in him. Boy, has he been muted these last two games. And again, is that him? Is he wearing down a little bit? Is it just the way the Hurricanes are playing against him? What have you seen?
Yeah, and maybe this too. I mean, the Hurricanes obviously know him from being one of their players. Maybe they've decided to not let the Rangers' only rat get them rattled. And he went face to face with Aho the other night, and Aho just kind of like looked at him and stared at him. Like, it's not going to happen. So if they're not going to react to that part of his game, then the Rangers need to have other guys do some chirping too, and maybe not chirping, and that's all stuff that's on the periphery. If you play your game and you play your system and you play with that passion, then the other stuff you really don't need it. It's great to have when you have somebody in somebody's face, some facials with the smelly glove trick and all that's part of it, but first and foremost, you need to play well. You need to play better, and Trocheck needs to play better, and that stuff will be more annoying to the Hurricanes when he's scoring or when his line is creating offense. The other stuff you could do with or without, but they have to play better.
Yeah, and one guy that I'm concerned about, and to be honest, it's been the entire series. So I go back to the hit that he took against the Capitals when he took the knee. Adam Fox just doesn't seem right to me. And I know, you're not in the locker room, you don't have anything, and it doesn't seem like any of the beats have, any inside information on whether Fox is hurt or not. But, he took that entire week off, before game one against the Hurricanes. So that's, some alarm bells right there.
Yeah.
And even though he's still playing his 20, 22, 24 minutes a night, he just doesn't look like Adam Fox. Even when the power play was clicking, didn't look like Adam Fox.
Yeah.
And seems to be eschewing the shot and trying to get rid of the puck quicker than normal. These are just my observations. I'm wondering if you're seeing the same thing and if you think that there might be something there that we don't know.
Yeah, I would guess that he's banged up. That knee injury that he had earlier in the season, and then certainly it looked like he got hurt again against Washington. It was Jensen, I think. Yeah. And but he still does some things that you say, wow. Some of his keep-ins last night on the power play are Leach-like. But yes, he's not. I don't think he's as mobile as you'd want him to be. Perhaps he's injured. Perhaps he's tired. Who knows? I know last year he looked like he was just worn out by the time the playoffs came. And that was part of because they were doing all those gymnastics with the cap and playing 5 defensemen at the end of the season there. I thought that wore him out. I don't know that he's worn out. I would suspect that he's banged up. But I think he's still got enough there to be a really good player and a contributor, or else he wouldn't be playing.
Yeah, it's funny, and you're 40 years on the beat with the Rangers, and so I'm going to bring up a reference, and I'm not saying this is not apples to apples. I'm not saying James Patrick and Adam Fox in the same sentence here, like you use Adam Fox and Brian Leach in the same sentence. However, when you talk about guys wearing down, do you remember how much weight James Patrick would lose over the course of the season? Yeah. They come in training camp, he'd be talking about, I'm in the best shape of my career. Yeah. And then he'd be like 15 pounds lighter by the end of the season. And he was done every playoff round with that Ranger team. Yeah. He was so worn down. And of course, before Leach got there, he was the target. So teams were just, pounding him behind the net during the postseason. So I know it's not apples to apples here, 2 totally different guys, 2 different skill levels. But when you said that, when you talk about the wearing down, I always think about when a defenseman gets worn down in a playoff series, cheap. I think James Patrick.
Yeah, for sure. And then Ray Carpiniello took advantage of him too that one time. I don't know if in 86. And that was a classic when the Rangers were in that series against Montreal, and the linesman Ray Carpiniello took out James Patrick and allowed Claude Lemieux to score on a 2-on-1. Yeah, James is still mad about that, and that's in my book too. James is still very angry about that, and I don't blame him. And he never got an apology. But yeah, poor James.
Well, since you mentioned it, there it is.
I see
right?
that. Yeah.
Rick Carpiniello, and forward by Brian Leach. It's not like forward by, Jim Cerny or something. No, forward by Brian Leach. So this is legit. Rangers, the franchise. You've referenced the book, and I kind of referenced back. I was trying to, find that segue to kind of give it a little historical bent here and let you tell some stories from the book. But, one of the key things, everybody wants to, drum up, well, it's 30 years. That's a 30-year anniversary. And boy, the Rangers 94 and 2024, they both won the President's Trophy. They both started 7-0 in the playoffs. And, now as the people are, heading towards their windows and tall buildings and bridges, looking for an escape. I wrote about this today, and I said, well, the big difference is, and it's not the 2024 team's fault, but now they have to stand up to it. The greatness of that 94 team, among many things, but the greatness was when the chips were down, when everything had turned against them, they found a way.
Yeah.
Right? That Devils series, Game 6, Game 7 after Zelepukin, even the Vancouver series, they lose Game 1 in overtime. Richter makes a save on Bure out in Vancouver, pulls them out of the abyss there. One example after another. So this is really this 2024 team's opportunity Like this is their moment,
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
and the first moment they've been put in this position. And I see you nodding and agreeing. To talk a little bit about, you know, the inner workings of what worked there in '94, and how the Rangers faced this first massive challenge
Yeah,
to their playoff run.
yeah, for sure. First things first. I don't think these teams should be compared because that team was
Correct.
clearly the best team in the league that year.
Correct.
Um, and they got some breaks early when some of the other favorites like Pittsburgh and Detroit went out early. But that I think that team beats anybody, and I think the Devils were the second best team in the league by far. So I don't think this team is that team. That team was deeper. Of course, there was no salary cap. That team would have had about
Oh,
160 million
yeah.
payroll today, but that team was far superior. So that first, and then second, the leadership group on that team was unmatched, like maybe ever. Um, you know, arguably with the great Islander teams and the great Montreal teams in terms of the leadership group uh, in that locker room. I think that, excuse me, my allergies are coming on here. That I think that the game 5 against Washington that year, after they'd lost their first game, was such a great response.
Yep.
And Brian Leach was amazing, and Mark Messier still lauds him over that performance in Game 5. Um, and I think that was the first statement they made. Now they would have to make a bunch more. They were in some precarious situations, as you know, throughout the last two series. Uh, their Game 5 in the final was dreadful. It was pathetic.
Yeah.
But the way they reacted each time, and the way they reacted in games like the Valerie Zelepukin game, the way they pulled themselves up and got back to what they do, even with all the chaos swirling around them with their coach and all the other things that were going on, that's something you don't see. Maybe you see it once in a lifetime, and maybe that was it. maybe that was the
Right.
one in our lifetime. Um, if this team can have any of that, they should get rid of Carolina here, and I'm sure they're going to have their. I'm sure they would then have their hands full with Florida or Boston, probably Florida, um, and then whoever. They're going to
Right.
have much more difficult road the last 8 wins, if those are to be had, than the first 8. Um, but first, they need to take care of this, and the Rangers in '94 took care of it. They got rid of Washington. They had a little annoyance nipping at their heels, and they swatted it aside, and they took care of that. And I don't know if you remember. Excuse me again. My in the book I wrote about the Peter Bondra made some comments. He was Washington's star player,
Yep.
star forward, and he made some comments about how old the Rangers are and how they're finished and they're beyond their primes, and the way the Rangers reacted to that was Kevin Lowe saying he's right. We are old. And Jay Wells just laughing at him and saying, and Neil Smith saying, I hope our guys can get enough Geritol and put their canes aside for tonight's game. And the way they handled that was, I mean, they used it obviously as fuel, but they laughed at it, and they used they took that as an advantage, not a disadvantage. Their age was all in their favor, and all their experience was in their favor. And this current team has some experience, doesn't have that experience. So I think it's going to be on the Chris Kreiders and the Mika Zibanejads and the guys who do have that somewhat experience uh, to really put it forth now.
So, in your book, you tell so many great stories, and I was blowing you up with texts. I'm like, oh, I remember that. Hey, do you remember this? As
Yeah,
I'm reading things from,
yeah,
30 odd years ago or what have you. So it's clear the 93-94 team, that was a magical, even for us reporters, that was a magical time, a
yeah.
magical team to cover. The storylines wrote themselves, thrilling, amazing. Was there, let's put 93-94 aside, and it could be a winning team, a losing team. What was your next favorite Ranger team, or it could be a group of seasons together, but
Yeah.
stretch that was the most fun for you to cover, and
Yeah,
why?
I think there were two of them. The first was my first team. My first team was 78, 79. That team was hilarious. Like they were no. I wrote that no team ever had as much fun as they did going to the Stanley Cup final. Nobody, and I still hold that as the truth. There were so many good guys on that team, and so much they had so much fun and didn't give a crap really about anything else. I mean, just play the game, game's over, celebrate it, or lick your wounds and get to the next one, and then get out on the next night's an off night, get out and enjoy it, and they did, and Ron Duguay and some of the others still wonder if that didn't cost them in the
Oh yeah.
final. Um,
Hey,
they had a lot.
bring it up to Dave Maloney. He's got an opinion.
Yeah, I know, I know he does, and JD too, and um, they had a lot of fun in Montreal, and Phil Esposito was begging Freddie Shero to get them out of Montreal on that off day,
Yeah.
because he feared that this stuff was going to happen, and it did happen. But I don't think they were beating Montreal anyway,
Yeah.
regardless of how that series started. And then my second favorite, I guess, would be the stretch from 2012 through 2015. Henrik Lundqvist and Tortorella and Vigneault and Rick Nash and those guys. I think they really, the 2011 2012 team arrived way too early, had no depth whatsoever, did not have a fourth line or a third D pair that they could use,
You're right.
and still did what they did. The next year they crapped out and they got their coach fired, which I think was still think was a mistake. Although Vigneault came in and did amazing stuff first couple of years, and I think the 15 team had a better chance to win the Stanley Cup than the 14 team did.
Totally
Uh,
agree.
if they didn't get so banged up on defense in that Game 7 against Tampa, I think they go to the Stanley Cup final. I think they have a real good chance to beat Chicago. So that was kind of a fun run, and then also the 85-86 team came out of nowhere, went to the semifinals. Um, that was kind of a fun team and some characters, but pretty much all the teams that I've covered have had characters, and even the what I like to call the Dark Ages, which was the John Muckler, Ron Lowe, Brian Trottier era, was as bad as it gets, but still quite a few characters on those teams.
Yeah, and it's character for, and I know you feel the same way. It's about the hockey, and of course, over 80. If you're going to cover 82 games as a reporter,
Yep.
you like to have a good product, if
Yeah,
possible, to be covering. But it's about the people. And
yeah,
one of my favorite Rangers of all time. You talk about characters, and I don't think anybody ever mentions this guy. But when Michel Petit was with the Rangers, he was like a go-to for me. Mike
yeah,
Small, everybody
yep,
called him Michel
yep,
Petit,
yep,
Mike
yep,
Small.
yep,
Uh, and it was a real tough loss. The locker room was kind of empty, and Petit was like my go-to anyway. We kind of, got along well, and
yep.
consistently went to him. Go to him after the game, and I asked him a question about, whatever tough loss, bad loss, and I knew what he wanted to say, and it's going to be obvious what he wanted to say, but he said, "Yes, Jim, that was a real kick-assing." And it's
That
still to
was
this day one of
that
my
was him.
favorites.
That
And
was
right, you can
that
picture
was
Michel Petit
that
saying
was
that.
him. That was him for sure, for sure. And just it just reminded me of a guy who came in. I guess was right after Petit because he wore the same number. Randy Moeller
Randy Moeller. Yeah.
was a character and a half, right?
Yeah.
And he was such a good guy. I remember his favorite saying was, "I've been to 4 World's Fairs and I've never seen that." What does that mean? Yeah, but he'd say it all the time. And yeah, there were some really good guys, really fun guys to be around. And the other thing, you kind of brought it up too. You want a good story to cover. My feeling's always been that you want a really good team or a really bad team. You don't
Right.
want a
Right.
mediocre team. You don't want a
Yeah.
middle of the pack, maybe make the playoffs, maybe not. You don't want that. You want a really bad team or a great team.
So, all right, we're wrapping up here. Give me 30 seconds or less. I don't think that there's any way. It's not even so much the Rangers, but yes, it's the Rangers. I can't see Igor Shesterkin losing 4 straight games to Freddie Anderson here. If I'm going to put it down to the goalies, right? So even in the wins, every time there's a shot at Anderson, you're like, oh, what's he going to do? So that's my take. The Rangers are going to, I think, are still going to win the series. I don't see Igor himself losing 4 in a row. So 30 seconds or less, how does this play out?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. But I think if it gets to 7, all bets are off. So I think this is a game they need to win. Game 6 in Raleigh, as hard as it's going to be, is a game the Rangers have to win. Game 7, toss a coin. So for sure, I don't see Shesterkin losing 4 in a row to Freddie Anderson or Pachekov or whoever they have in goal. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Igor has to be a big part of Game 6.
Well, there you go, Carpy. Appreciate it. There's the book again. I'll just cover my face.
Hey, it's coming out in paperback in October.
See, and any new addition to it? You're going to add to it, or
No, no.
Well, there you go. I tried to give you the big build. If you got the hardcover, get the soft cover too, because Carpy added another chapter, but he's adding nothing. He's brought nothing. Okay.
I'm retired, Jim. Give me a break.
Well, I know we probably took you off the golf course, so really appreciate your time today. And it's just fun, hearing you break down stuff again, and love the book. And you know what, maybe during the off season, we'll delve more into the book, and get into more of the stories. Cause I know I did. I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, you have to.